Okay, hey everyone. Welcome to the stream. Going to be doing another lesson today. Actually, we did a lesson with Amanda last week about microplans, and just going to be doing a part 2 this week. So another game that we'll play through. I'll have Amanda guess some of the moves and maybe work on your chess a little bit as well. How are you doing today? Have you done any chess today so far?
I'm good. I haven't. I went on a bit of a grind last night. What is time? Last night. So I played a bunch of rapid games, got my rating up a bit, just hit 1400, so that's a milestone.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Shoot, I gotta change your your rating again.
No, it's fine. Yeah,
No.
I've been sitting here like, he doesn't respect my new status. No, I'm just kidding.
No, YouTube will know now. Since our last lesson, you gained 50 points, which is awesome after after 1 week. Well, that's great. Okay. Yeah. Sweet. Okay. So today, like last week, I just wanted to go through another game with you, have you guess some moves, and in the meantime, we can talk a little bit about, let's say, chess strategy and how to come up with a plan and of what to do in any given position. So this game starts off with e4, c5. White goes knight f3. What do you play against the Sicilian?
I play the Grand Prix attack a lot, but then if I'm not playing that, then I'll play c3, d4.
Okay, cool. I saw some games you play c3, right, in this position, and then like try to build up the center.
I've started doing that, like against e5 with the Ponziani.
Okay, and then you'll also play this one here. Gotcha. Cool. Okay, so here we have knight f3. Black goes e6. Many options here, of course. Many options for white. But white decides to play d3, which usually indicates, since white's closing the bishop, that they want to put the bishop on g2 and play this type of setup, which typically called King's Indian attack. With the bishop going fianchetto and then white castling kingside. Okay, we'll just play through the opening because it's not super important. Knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, castles, knight g1. Here white goes rook e1. There are many other useful moves here as well, but moving the rook to e1 is pretty good for white. d6. And now white goes c3. Okay, so what do you think is white's idea with this last move, c3? What's the intention here?
I think, c3 generally does two things, right? It prepares d4 and it opens up the queen. So you could pin the knight, but I don't know how much that does right now, because if you play d4, then there's a trade on. So then black, if you play d4 after this, regardless of whether or not you pin the knight, right, black has a choice to either push c4 to trade on d4 or to do nothing. So I would say probably most likely here it prepares d4.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, it also opens up the queen, but the queen doesn't have too many targets this early on, so it's not clear where white's queen necessarily wants to go. But yeah, white would love to just play d4 and just take some space in the center. because this is kind of an advantage in and of itself. You get more space, you have more room for your pieces get better squares, and eventually your pieces have kind of more access to the board. Yeah, very kind of typical plan in these kinds of positions. Black castles, white goes d4, black takes, white takes, and now black plays d5. Okay, so question for you. How should white react to this one?
All right, well, David was saying yesterday that closing the center benefits the person with more space. There's also that bishop on g7.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably pushing here because it makes the bishop lame.
Yeah, shuts down this bishop on g7. Yeah, definitely e5 is the right move here. Again, white has like a big choice. You can close it up, you can take on d5, or let's say you can just try to keep the tension with a move like knight to c3. And then it's a question of the kind of structure that we're going to be getting. But if we take on d5, black takes back, and we're left with this isolated pawn in the center. It's fairly weak, and it's going to be a problem for white. And if knight c3, then black can just take on e4, and once again, white is left with this weak pawn. The bishop has a fantastic target. So their knight can come to f5 now, and yeah, very, very easy to attack this pawn. So e5 is not just the right move for, let's say, structural reasons, so you don't get left with this weakness, but yeah, you're also just shutting down this bishop and not giving it any targets. And if black ever wants to break free with a move like f6, then whenever white is taking here, you're kind of the one that's getting like a nice weakness on an open file. So this e6 pawn is always a big bummer for black. Okay, so e5. Black played bishop d7. White played knight c3. And black played rook c8. Okay, question for you again. How should white proceed? And I'm not looking for some like huge solution, just your maybe first instinct or two.
Yeah, you could bring the bishop to g5.
Mm-hmm.
That pins the knight on e7.
Fair. How do you think black will respond to that? Yeah.
Maybe with h6. Just kick it right away.
Mm-hmm.
You also can't move back to h4 at that point, or your bishop's trapped.
Yeah, so bishop g5, h6 is kind of a question, right?
I mean, you could figure out another way to develop the bishop, so that's... It could go to d2, e3, f4. It's not really doing much on f4. It's not really doing much on any of those squares. I guess on f4, perhaps it's supporting the pawn on e5. But that seems, you know, what we've been talking about is just developing your least active piece, and right now it's still on c1, and so connecting the rooks could be a good plan here, just moving the bishop and the queen.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's close position, right? So in fact, almost every bishop on the board is struggling. Even our light square bishop actually doesn't have any kind of real target in the position. It's just kind of sitting in front of our king. But developing the bishop has its own benefits to the rest of your pieces, especially your queen and two rooks. So yeah, bishop g5 is a good first instinct, but then the issue is, right, black will play h6, and then it's a question of whether we want to give black this move, if we're just going to have to go back anyway, or if there's some follow-up. You could consider this move, bishop f6, because this is kind of potentially annoying for black's king. But let's say black just takes and then goes after the pawn with something like knight f5. We could easily see white losing the pawn, right? It's very extended and might not be so so good. If we could hold on to the pawn, then this would be really nice. But yeah, it doesn't look so great. So
Yeah.
that would mean, yeah, we have to go back, and then might not be worth it, to give black this move for free. So yeah, in the game, white just goes bishop f4. And you can kind of feel the logic. It's like, yeah, just developing the bishop. Now if black plays f6, white has a little bit more support over e5. And so that's kind of nice, but really just getting out of the way so that white can just develop the queen and get the rook to c1. Okay, so black goes knight a5, rook c1, and b5. White to play. How should we proceed?
I'd consider a3 because I think the move b4 is a little annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And then a3 also kind of sets up, well, the problem with a3 is that it allows actually knight b3, which is also a little annoying. So you could play b4, which stops them from going b4 and kicks the knight. So then where does the knight go? I guess it really likes that outpost on c4. Everything here looks annoying, actually. But I suppose you could preemptively move the knight, and that would take the sting out of b4 and offer a rook trade. So you could move the knight to, say, e7, because that pawn's over defended. So do you want me to choose one?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question, right? What to do here? Because, well, I guess one question I would have is, yeah, is it worth it to move the knight right away, or should we wait for black to play b4 and then prepare to move the knight? Or is it worth it to just play a3 to stop this move altogether?
I don't know. I think that I don't like leaving the knight there and waiting for black to play b4.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't like giving that knight an outpost on b3. So the problem is if you move the knight, there's not really a follow-up, right? Because this square, there's not a lot of places for it to go afterward. Mm-hmm. This seems very slow.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So yeah, I think I want to maybe play 3 and stop b4 and then deal with this outpost. It's not an outpost. The queen is defending it. All right, so I definitely want to play a3.
Okay, so yeah, fair enough. I mean, a3 is definitely a reasonable move, and it does look, yeah, like if the knight gets kicked to e2, it's really hard to get it back into the game doing something useful. The drawback with a3 is, yeah, one part actually, like, okay, you have this square covered, but now it's a little bit hard for white to play queen d2 because then knight b3 is a big problem. But the other issue with this move is that now when black plays, let's say, knight c4, it's really hard to get rid of this knight because we can't really go b3 because this pawn is going to be hanging. And this knight is otherwise just going to be a very kind of strong piece for black. So what white does is actually Fischer playing white here. Really well played game. He goes b3, which I think wasn't so much on our radar, right?
Yeah, I had mentioned b4, but not b3.
Yeah, b4 would be kind of like direct opposite. This would be like inviting black to get this outpost, which sometimes you can allow it if you have a plan. But the issue is, like, okay, even if we try to exchange this knight, black is always going to be able to use this square, either by putting another piece or even by taking with the pawn and then getting the d5 square. Let's just say, for example, black plays, let's say bishop c6 even, we take, black takes this way, and then wants to use this square, and structurally, yeah, black is doing really, really well.
Yeah.
So b3 just takes the square away, but of course allows b4, which is definitely kind of a drawback. But the interesting thing is just to see what white kind of had in mind. So b4, knight e2, black plays bishop b5, queen d2, eyeing this pawn, also finally connecting rooks, and black goes knight c6, because now the knight on a5 is really, really bad. And so this kind of shows the value of the move b3 is just like completely kills anything this knight can do. So black has to lose time retreating it, and okay, yeah, here's where white needs to kind of choose a direction and kind of show like what does white want to do with this knight on e2. So this is where we have to find a micro plan. You know, how to proceed in the position, not like a whole long variation, but maybe 2-3 move idea in terms of a plan. So feel free to take some time. I'll mute and talk to chat for a sec and come back to see if you're ready.
Sure.
Alrighty, folks. So you heard the question. It's white to play. We got to get this knight on e2 into the game. The question is, how can white do that? Hopefully, our ideas are also connected with, yeah, some kind of general plan. So how important is it to play moves that kill the opponent's pieces? I mean, it just depends on the position. Sometimes, you know, you can play aggressively. Sometimes you don't really have a lot of aggressive ideas, and instead it's better to restrict your opponent's moves. If we go back 2 moves, white didn't have anything so fantastic they could do, so it was much more important to just play b3 and restrict the knight on e5, not giving black this big square. So it really just depends on what's happening. So some ideas to go rook c5, knight c1, rook c2, knight c1. Yeah, it makes sense trying to bring the knight to d3 and maybe c5 for sure. Yeah, we have this nice square with rook c5. Vertizer wants g4, knight g3, h4, h5. Paulie wants bishop h6. All right, let's check in. Okay, how's it going?
It's good.
Any ideas so far?
Yeah, I came up with one. So the idea that I came up with was moving the rook to d1 and then knight c1, knight d3, knight c5, because that c5 square looks like a really nice place for the knight. The only issue with that is that the knight it takes 3 moves to get the knight to d3, and black's knight looks really nice on f5, and so that would drop the pawn, and which, because if you did 1 whatever here, and then black plays here, and then you're removing the defender of this pawn, there's 2 attackers, so then black could take for free. So I haven't figured out a solution to that problem yet.
Yeah. Well, that probably makes a lot of sense, because the knight stands really well on d3 and then, of course, on c5 also. It's just a matter of, how we can make it happen. And this is the unfortunate reality in a chess game. A lot of times you have a nice plan, but simply it's just very hard to get it to work. Because, this knight on f5, queen on b6, black can put a lot of pressure. I still like white's position, but you would have to do something like bishop e3, yeah, to defend the pawn, and then slowly try to transfer. And then maybe once your knight gets to d3, black decides they don't want to see that knight on c5 and just takes it. Is very possible. And then white gets maybe small advantage, but yeah, definitely a good idea overall. Okay, yeah, there are some suggestions for like doubling on the c file, which also makes sense, and then black follows up with queen to b6. I think white is usually going to be slightly better here, but maybe nothing special. I think Fischer's thought process was, well, similar in that he really did not like this move, knight f5, because white would also like to play something like bishop h6, for example, just to maybe look to attack on the king side. But the issue with bishop h6 is black just immediately takes, queen takes, gets knight f5 with a tempo, and white's attack is just kind of immediately shut down, and white has to be careful not to lose this one, because now actually black is starting to take, and then d4 is hanging, and yeah. So with one move, he stops knight f5 altogether. Any ideas?
g4?
g4, indeed. And it looks odd, I'm sure, but actually a very smart move. It just kills this knight. Now the f5 square is not available. And also opens up a square for the knight to come to g3, where white's knight on g3 can actually support the kingside attack. So he's just creating a square for the knight and killing black's knight in the process. Now normally we say not to push pawns in front of your king like this, because generally it's going to be a very weakening move. But if we take a look at the position, it's a very closed position. We've had very few pawns traded off, and that means there's not really a lot of open files, and also means that black's pieces are not really anywhere near white's king. So in short, if white can get away with this, then this type of attacking plan can actually be quite strong, because now white wants to play knight to g3, h4, h5, bishop h6, and in fact white's position is built very nicely to just focus on the queen side, on the king side, and yeah, black's pieces are not exactly able to get over there because everything is so blocked up. So very strong plan. Let's play through a few moves. Black played a5, knight g3, queen b6. Black is just hoping to create enough counterplay in the center to, let's say, distract white. But here white goes h4, now just wants to advance h5, maybe open the h file one day, and yeah, eventually create an attack. Knight b8. Oh, now earlier you asked me a little bit about pawn storms. And yeah, here we go. Now normally when we're attacking with pawns, we want our king to be castled on the opposite side of the board. We just want our king far away from the action so our rooks can use the g and h1 squares and support the attack. But if you're controlling the center and you have space, it basically makes it very difficult for the opponent to take advantage. And you can still launch attacks like this with the king, or with the king's castled on the same side. Okay, so game continues. Bishop h6. Black goes knight d7. So black's last move, rerouting the knight to d7, hoping to maybe defend the king side one day with like knight coming to f8, also opening up the c file so that black could try to trade rooks and trade off some of white's attacking pieces. Bishop h6, knight d7, and yeah, white to play. How to continue from here?
So a lot of times in this position, I take the bishop on g7, but that doesn't look right here because that bishop isn't doing anything. It's just staring into pawns. And so if we're not getting the queen to h6, then... So, I mean, what happens if you push h5. Then you open up both kings. The queen can come to g5, threaten mate on g7. If black pushes, then white just takes. Yeah, I would push h5 here probably.
Yeah, absolutely. h5 I think is definitely a strong move here. Just advancing the attack. Black has no immediate threats in the position, so we're just improving before really committing to anything. And so this move, bishop takes g7, definitely does make sense. You can play this one, but you can also keep the tension. There's no immediate reason we have to take, and sometimes it's better to keep the tension. Maybe your opponent plays a move like rook e8, and then they kind of have to lose a tempo, and then maybe you take on g7. At some point, we do want to trade just to leave black's king without this important defender, but we're in absolutely no rush. So a move like h5 here definitely makes a lot of sense. And you could also take and play h5. It's not a huge difference in this position. Basically, white is just trying to continue the attack. And then we have moves like maybe queen g5, maybe h6 check, maybe building up like king h2, rook h1. Very common idea to get the rook to the h file and then try to attack. And yeah, we can kind of decide from there. Fischer goes for another move, which also makes sense. He plays queen to g5 right away. And so let's think, what's the idea behind this one?
Well, the knight on e7.
Hitting this one.
And if we play h5 after, then if black can't push, even though that wasn't going to help them, or bring like the knight to h5, and if white takes, then you have queen g7 mate.
Yeah, so we have like knight h5 ideas as well. Either maybe taking first and then knight h5 with check, or immediate knight h5. We want to be a little bit careful, because like knight h5, for example, black can take on h6, queen takes, and then the knight on h5 is hanging, but maybe white still gets a very strong attack there anyway. But this move, just immediately threatens to capture something here and get the attack going, so kind of forcing black to do something. Black takes on c1, rook takes c1, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, black plays rook c8. Here Fischer trades on c8. Now, why do you think he takes here rather than, let's say, just leaving the rook on c1 because it's defended, or let's say getting it out of the way? Why exactly trade here?
If the knight wants to come to g5, then you don't want to disconnect the queen and the rook.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, right, white doesn't want to lose any harmony here, or any time. Knight g5 here, it's not possible because the rook is hanging with check. If we move the rook away, then we're losing time, and that gives black time to defend. And by taking, it's also a very forcing move. Black, of course, has to recapture and has to like pull another piece kind of away from the king side. So even though it's trading pieces, white is the one attacking. It's like white is still keeping the tempo of the attack going. Okay, so knight takes. Now I think knight g5, probably met with knight f8, although it's still a useful move, but white decides to start with h5 and is still putting pressure, even just with the queen and 3 minor pieces. Here black goes queen d8. So looking to possibly maybe try to trade queens with queen f8. Okay, now white goes knight to g5, forcing knight f8. Now black no longer has this move. Okay, white to play. How to proceed from here. Let me give you some time to think about it as well, and I will come back to you in a couple of minutes. Alrighty here, so white to play. We're looking for a way to continue the attack. Yeah, kind of a famous one here. So if you've seen it before, maybe don't don't spoil it for others. We'll see what Amanda comes up with here. 4 f5 f6. Yeah, that's definitely a interesting plan. Mega Man really wants to make knight takes f7 work. Well, king takes f7, right? How about bishop f1? Bishop f1's not a bad move. Yeah, we'll be trading off bishops and then having to continue from there. Yeah, it would be really nice to get our own bishop into the game. Or maybe getting the knight to f6. Yeah, that would be another very nice idea if we could make it happen. But how to do it? Alrighty, let's check in. Alrighty, how's it going?
Good.
What are we thinking here?
Yeah, well, my first thought was to see if there was like some sort of tactic that would work right away, but I didn't see anything. I thought about like taking with a knight on f7, but there wasn't quite a follow-up, and then if you lose that knight on g5, then you're only attacking with your queen, and you can't checkmate with just a queen. So the two ideas are, I mean, there's one pawn that isn't in the attack on f2, and then there's one piece, which is I guess two pieces, right? There's the knight on g3 and the bishop on g2. So you could somehow try to like reroute the bishop in a few moves and get pointed toward the king. And I think if you were to do that, then that would really add some firepower over there. And it would improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is kind of the key here, is just trying to figure out what to do with white's pieces, especially bishop on g2 and knight on g3. Now, one interesting idea would be to push f4. And you mentioned you can get this pawn in as well. And yeah, this pawn of f5 actually is pretty annoying for black. I mean, we're just super active and just trying to open up some lines. So for example, let's say bishop d3. Let's say white takes here. White can go hg or fg, I'm not sure. Let's say this way. And yeah, let's say white just pushes f5. And okay, black can take a couple times, but what do you think? How should white continue here?
h5, and then how do you defend? Yeah, how do you defend queen g7?
Yeah, knight h5 is just a killer. Actually, pretty typical mating construction. When you have queen on h6 and two knights, g5 and h5, there's just so many different mates in the position that it's just virtually impossible to defend everything. So this already, yeah, and that's it, game over. So black would have to be very careful to avoid this. Maybe bishop takes f5, but then white can weaken the structure anyway. Something like bishop f3, bishop h5. And even though some pieces are coming off, white still has enough pieces to cause a lot of damage to black's king side. So definitely still big problems here. Okay, so this was already, I think, very much a very strong plan for white, and black is just really passive. But Fischer finds just very like creative way to get the pieces into the attack. Basically, it's like this game where you try to put your pieces on the best possible squares. So if I asked, like, if you could put this knight anywhere, where would you put it? You would say,
I mean, pointed toward the king somehow. Diagonal?
Well, where would you place the knight if you could move it anywhere?
Oh, the knight. Okay. Yes. I was thinking about the bishop. Probably
f6.
Yeah.
So when we're attacking, sometimes a useful game to play is just like, you just ask, how could you possibly get the knight to f6? And so Fischer probably asks this question and comes up with the move bishop e4. And in doing so, tries to solve two problems. Number one, he gets the bishop on this diagonal, adding pressure like he wanted, except now it doesn't have to take 3 moves. And offering black the opportunity to let him get the knight to e4, which is then just going to be devastating. Knight f6 check is the threat, king h8, and then white takes on h7 with either knight, and black's king just getting checkmated. Yeah, so black has an extra piece, but it's totally meaningless here because these pieces are just not defending any squares that they need to. So yeah, very cool move, bishop e4, and also important that this move just kind of adds to the pressure. So now, for example, well, let's ask, what is white's threat here? Let's say we just gave white an extra move. Black plays something like knight b6. What is white's next move here?
After takes, then if we take again, they take again, we give this, no, that's taking the queen. I don't want to do that. I mean, we're adding the pressure towards the king, so let's see. I mean, it takes. I'm definitely missing something. You could play f4 again.
Yeah, the question is how to use this bishop on this diagonal. You have the right start. Like, we want to take on g6, kind of soften up the king side, then let's say hg. And then what attacking moves does white have here that we should be considering?
I guess you could move the knight to h5 anyway. And if pawn takes, then you have bishop h7 check. The knight can't take it because that's mate. King has to move. And then you fork the queen and the king.
Yeah. And that's mate.
Oh, it is mate.
Mate, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is white's huge threat. Takes, knight h5. Because knight on h5 comes with a bunch of mate threats. So knight h5 is a move we kind of always want to be looking at because it's so dangerous. If it works, it's just devastating. Because queen g7, knight f6, all these threats. Then if black takes, that opens up the diagonal, and then we get bishop h7 check, and yeah, mating the king. So, okay, huge threat already coming with this move. Black decided to play queen to e7. And now black's idea is that if white takes this one, black wants to go f takes g6 and use the queen to defend along the 7th rank. Well, that's fine. Fischer, he could have taken as well. He now goes for kind of nice sacrifice. Knight takes h7. And let's see his point. Knight takes hg, fg. And what do you think should be white's next move here? What was white's intended follow-up?
Well, the queen could take the pawn with check. But then you could block with the queen. So if bishop takes, then maybe bishop takes and then knight h5 and you're getting all the pieces in?
Yeah, absolutely. Bishop takes g6. Now, queen takes g6 And then queen g7. Definitely not so bad for white, because you can take here, right? On e6. And then knight hangs as well. But yeah, maybe black goes king h8, and now the problem is we kind of owe black a tempo, because this one is hanging. So bishop takes g6 is nice, because now, okay, we have this threat, takes, and then takes here. And we want to go knight h5, and then bishop h7, knight f6. And white has three very strong pieces around black's king. Black has two defenders, open king, and not really, enough defenses here. So white's attack is just crushing. Black tried knight g5, but now knight h5 anyway. Knight f3 check. Okay, now white to play. We have to be very precise here.
These are the positions where I just resign.
Resign.
Well, there's only a couple options. So you can only go to g2 or h1. If h1, then the queen comes in. And that is, you're probably getting mated. So king to g2, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes defense is all about just elimination, just eliminating moves that you clearly want to avoid. And yeah, once we see king h1, queen h4, then, okay, king g2 becomes a lot more tempting. Black played knight h4 check. Okay, how to continue from here?
Well, you don't want to move back. I don't think you want to move back down. So if king h3, then black has another check on f1. And then you just are going to g3 anyway. So probably g3.
Okay, good.
Or, yeah.
You can also go king h1, because now, black has no checks, and we have knight f6 coming. But king g3 also good. Black played knight takes g6. Okay, how should we continue here?
Let's see. Well, you could do, or the two options, right, are taking the knight back with check, or giving, you have this in-between move of giving the check with the knight first. So if you check with the knight, then the king could move to f7, and then you're not able to play, you can't take the knight on g6 anymore, but you can give a check on h7, and then the king has to go to h8. I would give this check. I mean, if I had a ton of time, I would spend the time calculating it and make sure.
Yeah. Let's take an extra second here. Try to calculate this line out.
Because if we can't get mate for sure, then we want to take the knight.
Right. So
the king can go either to f7. Okay, that's it. The king can only go to f7. Well, in that case, all right. So king f7, queen h7, and then not here, 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 here. Okay, so king f8, queen g8. So that's mate.
That's mate. Yeah, very good. So, right, he doesn't rush and just take this one, although, okay, it looks like still white gets a very nice attack here. You have two pawns for the piece. Your queen and knight are super active. And, yeah, even in some endgame like this, you can push f4, f5, f6, and black's pieces are having a really hard time, especially this knight. But, yeah, we always want to look out for these kind of secondary options, because actually knight f6 is much, much stronger. Now, if black gives the queen here, then it doesn't really save the game for long. But yeah, this one is just mate. Okay, well done. Nice job.
We did it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really like this game. I feel like it's like a very straightforward attacking game, just starting out of the opening with the slow build-up of first taking the center with c3, d4, keeping the center with e5, and then dealing with this queenside play, I think was maybe one of the more interesting parts, where it's like white doesn't really fight on the queenside, rather works to keep the queenside somewhat closed. And especially this move b3 is very important, just not giving black this outpost on c4. And then of course g4, this was kind of like the start of white's big real plan in the position. Yeah, transferring the knight to g3 and then getting the kingside attack going. Then once the kingside attack starts running, everything is very smooth. White just advances, and okay, takes some combinational skill to find bishop e4, but when everything's kind of rolling with the attack, these moves, they often, how do I say, they start to present themselves once you play enough attacking games. It's just all about bringing in pieces towards the king, and you just look for ways to do it. And so yeah, then nice finish here with the sack and yeah, winning attack. Yeah, this game really makes it look easy, although I would say it's anything but. I mean, it's really really well played game. Any questions?
Definitely. No, I mean, it's really useful to see, because an idea like g4 in front of your king, it's not really one that I look for right now, but you just got to look at these games, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, right, center was closed, king is super safe, and then this knight on f5, as you felt when you were analyzing the position, was pretty annoying, no matter what way it was trying to do here. So yeah, very kind of counterintuitive, but very very strong positional move. Cool. Great work, Amanda. I think we're going to wrap it up there for the stream. If you missed the lesson, it will be up on YouTube sometime soon. And yeah, well, thanks for joining me. Hopefully, I will see you in some tournaments soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And yeah, absolutely. Hope the rating keeps shooting up.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, everyone. I'll see you all later. Take care.